Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're heading into some pretty tricky territory. We're talking about seduction, and honestly, there's this idea about love, this really widespread belief that's frankly quite dangerous. We need to tackle it head on.
Which idea is that?
This notion that finding real connection, deep affection is just easy, effortless almost, that you just, be yourself and the right person will magically appear.
Ah, yes, the effortless expectation. And you're right, it's the root of so much romantic disappointment, isn't it?
Yeah.
It fosters this kind of emotional laziness.
Laziness, how so?
Well, people start thinking their mere presence is enough, or that just being a decent human being automatically makes them desirable.
Yeah.
But the hard truth, the one we really need to unpack today, is that deep affection. It's not a given. It absolutely has to be earned.
Earned. So it's not just about showing up.
Not at all. It's really an art form, a demanding one. It takes understanding people, understanding the psyche, and yeah, sometimes it means getting dangerously close to manipulation if you're not careful.
Okay, so this isn't about simple charm or pickup lines. We're talking about seduction as a skill, something that requires, you said, study, practice, and really getting inside someone's head sometimes in unsettling ways.
Precisely. And to explore this, we're looking at two historical figures who were masters of this.
Right.
Giants of allure, you could say.
Right. Who are we talking about?
First, Giacomo Casanova, often called the ideal lover. He had this uncanny ability to mirror people's unmet needs. It was, almost alarming how good he was.
Okay. And the second?
Ninon de Lenclos. She was more of a strategist of the heart, mastered the subtle game of restraint, of absence, understanding when not to be there.
Interesting contrast.
Very. And their approaches, while revealing profound truths about desire, they also, crucially, highlight these really perilous paths you can stumble down if you're not ethically vigilant. Extremely vigilant.
And that is our focus today, isn't it? Dissecting this power. Because, look, these insights can lead to real connection if used with integrity. But, and this is the big but, they carry this huge risk. Manipulation, emotional damage, even eroding your own integrity.
Absolutely. This isn't light stuff. We're diving deep into the dangers of wielding influence in relationships without a very, very strong moral compass. The stakes are incredibly high.
So let's start with Casanova. The name itself is almost shorthand for seduction. But you know that old advice, just be yourself?
Oh yeah, the classic.
It sounds so simple, so honest, but when you look at Casanova and what we can learn from that kind of approach, that advice looks like a fatal flaw. It's dangerously incomplete.
It really is. More than incomplete, it often becomes an excuse, doesn't it? An excuse not to grow, not to evolve. It breeds entitlement.
Entitlement? How so?
It's a psychological trap. If you genuinely believe love should just happen to you, why would you bother developing emotional intelligence? Why try to cultivate that kind of magnetic quality that actually draws people in?
Right. You just wait for it to fall into your lap.
Exactly. But the truth, the one Casanova understood, even if he used it dangerously, is that real affection, it has to be earned. You have to deliberately work to, seduce someone's mind, inspire them, awaken something in them.
So love isn't a right, it's a skill. That's the takeaway here.
Fundamentally, yes. And if you ignore that, if you cling to the myth of effortless connection, you're basically guaranteeing mediocrity. Maybe worse, emotional stagnation.
It's like wanting to be a concert pianist but never touching a piano.
Precisely. Or a master chef who avoids the kitchen. It just doesn't work.
And Casanova, you mentioned he wasn't even conventionally good looking.
No, not really. His power wasn't his face. It was his profound fascination with women. Almost scientific, really.
Scientific. What did that look like in practice?
His method was anything but passive. He'd study a woman meticulously, observe her moods, figure out what was missing in her life, and then he'd become the solution. It required incredible observation, real psychological insight.
So he became a chameleon, essentially.
In a way, yes. He transformed himself into her ideal lover. Whatever she secretly wanted, he embodied it. It's like he was painting a portrait of her desires and then stepping into the frame, reflecting her own beauty, her longings, back at her in ways maybe even she hadn't fully recognized.
Wow. But that ideal lover thing, that sounds like where the danger creeps in, the double-edged sword you mentioned.
Absolutely, because while he presented this image of earnest devotion to each woman, it was fundamentally a performance, a calculated one.
How so? What did that involve?
Well, his devotion was a strategy. Lavish gifts, constant amusement, offering help, sure. But he also strategically used his wealth, his social standing, his connections. Conspicuous consumption was part of the act.
Okay, so using external factors.
And internal manipulation. What's really chilling is how he'd invent these elaborate, completely fabricated stories on the spot, just to captivate them, playing directly on their romantic ideals.
Fabricated stories. Wow.
Oh, yes. He even admitted it. He saw his own, let's call it infatuation, as justification for making false promises, for unscrupulous manipulation, even shameless exploitation. The only line he seemed to draw was at physical violence.
That's deeply disturbing. So this devotion without integrity, it's not just flattery, it's psychological coercion.
Exactly. The person becomes a charming fraud. And the real warning there is how easily that appearance of devotion can mask exploitation. It's incredibly insidious. You might not even realize it's happening.
Okay, so if love is a skill, what's the price of mastering it in this Casanovan way?
Well, it demands emotional mastery, yes. Deep listening, noticing subtle cues, leading someone into emotional states where they feel intensely alive, becoming magnetic, not just available.
But the personal cost, you said it was draining.
Profoundly draining. This constant performance, the mirroring, it takes a huge toll. And the ideal he created, it's built on sand, an inherently fragile foundation for any real relationship.
Because reality eventually intrudes.
Always. The danger flares up the moment the mask slips, the moment the real person starts showing through. It sounds exhausting, doesn't it?
Oh, really?
To maintain it, he had to keep this distance.
Yeah.
Always managing perceptions, preventing people from seeing the less than ideal parts. So the seducer gets trapped in this prison of performance.
Risking their authentic self.
And the authenticity of the connection itself. The cost can be your own integrity, a kind of soul-deep erosion. It's a heavy price.
And the historical record backs this up. Beyond the legend.
Oh, absolutely. If you look past the romantic myths, Casanova's life is a stark warning, full of misdeeds. Some were definitely abusive.
Like what?
Well, there's the infamous case where he scammed a very wealthy French noblewoman, used what he openly called magic arts, essentially psychological manipulation and trickery, to convince her to give him an enormous fortune.
And he felt no remorse.
According to his own writings, utterly without remorse. He just moved on.
He sounds ruthless.
He plunged into reckless deals, endless affairs, seemed to care very little about the broken hearts or, frankly, the discreet livelihoods he left scattered behind him. This wasn't just about feelings. It was leveraging everything, charm, status, money for personal gain. He really embodies the dark side of influence.
So fundamentally, he was a con man.
By his own admission, yes, a con man, an unscrupulous manipulator. His unsavory seduction, as some call it, was designed to bypass a person's rational thought, to alter their motives, violate their modest motive autonomy, meaning he stripped away their ability to choose freely based on their own true intentions. He manipulated their intentions. So, the chilling reminder from Casanova, charisma plus no morals equals devastation, broken hearts, ruined lives. It's a path paved with peril.
Okay, a very stark warning from Casanova.
Yeah.
Let's pivot now. Ninon de Lenclos, you said she offered a different, perhaps more subtle, but still perilous truth.
Yes, her most famous insight is incredibly counterintuitive, she said. Love never dies of starvation, but of indigestion. Just let that sink in.
Indigestion. So not lack of love, but too much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We usually assume love feeds from neglect, right?
Yeah.
Not enough attention.
Yeah.
But Ninon points out it's often the opposite. It's too much, too fast, too soon, too everything that actually kills desire.
Overabundance.
Yes.
Yeah.
This insidious excess. It's the quiet killer of romance. It turns joy into a chore, a burden, a kind of suffocation.
And that feels incredibly relevant today, with constant connection being the norm.
It's a huge modern warning, this temptation to just flood a relationship. Endless texts, constant calls, always being present online or in person. It feels like nurturing, but it can actually lead to what you call romantic suffocation. It's a silent killer.
Why? What makes it so deadly to desire?
Well, think about starvation versus indigestion. Starvation is obvious, painful. Indigestion, it creeps up on you. Slowly, almost unnoticed, from too many texts demanding instant replies, too much unstructured time together with no space, too many heavy expectations piled on too soon, too many deep emotional confessions before there's a foundation.
Right. Emotional overconsumption.
Precisely. And when you're emotionally stuffed, there's no room left for longing. Passion turns into pressure. And what follows? Boredom, irritation, losing respect, just deep emotional fatigue.
So why does that saturation kill desire? What's the mechanism?
Because real attraction, real seduction, it needs polarity. It needs a rhythm, a push and a pull, an invitation, like you said earlier, not force feeding.
Okay.
When that dance is missing, when it's just constant closeness, constant availability, desire just suffocates. It needs space to breathe. It withers without it.
It's like the opposite of absence makes the heart grow fonder. Constant presence makes the heart grow weary.
Exactly. Connects to the scarcity principle, but in reverse. Constant availability makes something seem less valuable. Someone who feels a bit scarce, a little harder to pin down, they become more desirable inherently.
The thrill of the chase.
Right. Constant connection replaces that thrilling dynamic with, frankly, the mundane burden of always being there. And here's the critical warning for right now. Our modern norms often equate constant contact with a healthy relationship, but that's often directly at odds with sustained desire.
So you're saying we might need to consciously resist always being available.
To cultivate lasting attraction, yes. You have to strategically embrace absence sometimes. Create that space for longing.
Okay, so if overfeeding kills desire, what's Ninon's antidote? How do you avoid this indigestion?
She called it emotional fasting and cultivating a sensual rhythm. The core idea, don't overfeed desire. Simple as that.
Don't exhaust it.
Exactly. Don't exhaust it with constant declarations, nonstop demands for attention. Instead, you actively leave room for silence. You give your partner or potential partner time to actually miss you. Let mystery breathe.
How does that work in practice?
It's about pacing.
Yeah.
Consciously preventing that emotional saturation, allowing desire to regenerate. Ninon insisted attention should be offered like wine, not water.
Rich, slow, memorable.
Right. Not just a constant drip. Then cultivates suspense. It builds longing. It creates depth instead of just draining the excitement. And she had these distilled ideas, her seductive truths, powerful tools, but again, with inherent risks if misused.
Let's look at a couple. One you mentioned seems especially relevant today. Mystery is more powerful than confession.
Yes. In our tell-all culture, this is radical. She basically said, reveal just enough to spark curiosity, but never lay your entire soul bare.
And she had that provocative line.
Silence is sexier than speech, and desire dies in the known. The danger she saw was spilling everything too soon, leaving nothing to the imagination.
So sustain uncertainty.
Exactly. Always leave something unsaid, something for them to wonder about. The more they wonder, the more fuel for desire. The more they know, the less compelling the exploration becomes. It's about restraint, which in today's world feels almost like a superpower.
Okay, what about the one you called the most dangerous? Mirror the desires they're afraid to admit. That sounds potent.
It is potent and deeply perilous if mishandled. This isn't about guessing. It's about profound empathy. Really listening, noticing what makes their eyes light up, what they truly long for, even if they don't say it.
Reflecting their suppressed fantasies. Intellectually, emotionally.
Spiritually even. It means becoming the living answer to their unconscious needs. If they secretly crave safety, you don't just say you're safe. You embody calm, reassuring strength. If they yearn for adventure, you subtly introduce unpredictability.
But the danger.
The danger is immense. If this mirroring is fake, if it's just a performance to get something, it's devastating betrayal. You're playing on their deepest vulnerabilities.
Leaving them feeling?
Spiritually violated, deeply invalidated, because you used their most hidden, vulnerable parts against them. That's not connection. It's pure, calculated control. It's incredibly damaging.
So bringing this all together, Casanova and Ninon, they reveal this tightrope walk, don't they, between power and integrity.
Absolutely. Casanova's history, the scams, the manipulation, the lack of remorse, it's a chilling picture of charisma without ethics. Using charm, status, money, deceit, all as weapons of conquest.
And Ninon. Her strategies seem more elegant, but still risky.
Definitely. Even her subtle methods carry profound risk if the intent isn't genuine. That ability to mirror deep desires, to understand attractions, rhythms, it's immense power. But if it's just an act for personal gain, it's still a betrayal of vulnerability.
You still risk becoming that charming fraud.
Exactly. Using emotional intelligence for control, not connection. The warning is unavoidable. Authenticity and responsibility are paramount. Because using these tools manipulatively, it inevitably breeds pain. It invalidates the very vulnerability you exploited. You don't want that wake of destruction.
So the goal isn't manipulation, but what? Cultivating something genuine.
Cultivating a truly rare magnetic presence, not a deceptive one. This demanding art, seen through Casanova's warnings and Ninon's strategies, teaches that real magnetism is earned. It's built on conscious effort, deep understanding. But, and we have to keep stressing this, it demands unwavering ethical vigilance. to stop it becoming a tool for harm, for personal corrosion.
It sounds like mastering a paradox almost.
It is a paradox. To cultivate that truly irresistible, enduring presence, the kind that attracts, not manipulates, requires discipline. The discipline to hold back, yet make someone feel utterly seen,
The elegance to be restrained.
while making them feel deeply desired. And the inner strength to be whole in yourself, complete, yet still make space for their hunger, their longing.
It reminds me of that idea. It's not the loudest voice that connects deepest.
Exactly. It's often the one who whispers to the parts of them nobody else even notices. So the challenge for you listening to this is to consider that ethical compass. How do you wield influence, even subtle influence, responsibly in your own connections?
This whole deep dive into seduction through Casanova and Ninon, it really hammers home the power involved. And like we've warned all along, that power comes with huge responsibility. It's far beyond tricks. It's about deep psychology.
And the integrity you bring to it, that's the absolute key.
True magnetic presence it's earned requires effort, understanding.
But without that ethical vigilance, the tools for connection become weapons of harm. That's the critical takeaway. We really encourage you to reflect on this, not just in romance, but in how you see people interact everywhere. The warnings are clear. The responsibility is yours.